Today, we are blessed and honored to have a very special guest, Aaron Bours, who committed his life to Israel, became a lone soldier, eventually became a master sergeant in the famous Givati Infantry Brigade. Aaron's story is really the story of the Jewish people. He's an incredibly engaging young man, thoughtful young man, and he's a young man who's sacrificed and dedicated his life to Israel, the state of Israel, the people of Israel, the Jewish people. And we wanted each and every one of you to hear it and to get a sense from a perspective of a young man growing up in America, his experiences, not only during his regular term of duty, developing as a professional in Israel, and then going back as a reservist into one of the most brutal scenes and one of the most brutal battles of modern history. Aaron, we're very grateful to you for spending your time with us, for sharing with us. And really, we want to hear your story.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all those who are watching, who are interested in getting the facts on the ground, so to speak. So Steve, as you pointed out, I grew up in Long Island, New York. I honestly was blessed with a great childhood. Growing up in Great Neck, never had to worry about anti-Semitism, had a great education, always knew that there were two sides to a story and how to get there. I grew up going to public school, but fostering a strong identity with Judaism, with Israel, since so much of Great Neck, it is such a strong Jewish community. I went to Hebrew school, went to the Israel Day parade, and of course, my parents instilled a strong sense of identity with Israel in me. They actually had spent 4 years in Israel themselves. So met in Tel Aviv. My dad is Dutch, my mom is American. They fell in love here. They lived here for 4 years, moved back to New York, and then had me and my brother, and that's history. So we grew up in New York, and basically, towards my high school years, I understood that I wanted to do something really impactful for Israel. Beyond, coming here as a kid and young adult, basically 6 times throughout, my younger years, I wanted to do something that kind of went beyond, trips to the Golan Heights and to the Negev and to the Dead Sea. I wanted to do something beyond being a tourist here. And I found my calling. I did some research, and I found my calling in the Israeli Defense Forces. The way that I described it is, I'm coming to protect the Hebrew tribe. It doesn't matter if you're a religious Jew or a secular Jew. It doesn't matter if you're, particularly spiritual or not. It's about defense. It's about protection of a people that's unfortunately has only shrunk, right, in the last decade plus. So I packed up my stuff, suited up, and at age 19, I moved to Israel with no Hebrew, no friends, no family here. It was quite difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Many lone soldiers, that's what they call us, who come here without family, end up packing up and going back because of how difficult things actually are. But I willed through it. I learned Hebrew. I made good friends. Boot camp was challenging. I was in the Givati Brigade. It's one of the 5 main combat infantry brigades. I was a bad soldier because I didn't know Hebrew. So they'd punish me. They'd make me do push-ups, and they'd make me crawl a lot. Obviously in good spirit, but that'll come back to my story in a bit when I talk about Gaza. I finished my active service relatively unscathed. And then I decided to stay in Israel. Stayed on a kibbutz in the north 2 years. I was bartender, had a beautiful life. Woke up, I was on the Sea of Galilee, going on boat trips, swimming in the lake. And eventually I went to IDC Herzliya, Reichman University. I got my degree in business and marketing. And then I went into high tech, and I'm very blessed to have had a great career off the bat. I got into Checkpoint, sales and marketing. Then I went to Google for 2.5 years, and now I'm actually the founding team member and chief marketing officer at an AI startup. We're about 90 people. We've grown quite a bit, and yeah, the company's doing well. I have 15 people in my department. So all in all, an amazing Israeli experience. I found my Israeli wife a month and a half before the war started. We got married. So almost, it's going to be a year soon. Um, and despite doing the reserves every year, nothing really too challenging ever came about. So we had 2014 Protective Edge. We were on the border, and we had mortar shells, and we had Hamas popping out of tunnels. There were a few years where we took posts in the West Bank at checkpoints, and of course there was violence there as well, but nothing like I'd ever seen post October 7th. Um, I was at a conference doing my job, so marketing in the AI field. I fly to a lot of conferences. I was in the States, in Las Vegas, in the suite in the Encore. October 7th popped off. My wife frantically calling me, telling me, basically worried that I was going to be called up. And sure enough, that's what happened. Delta canceled my flight at the same time that my unit got called up to prepare to go into Gaza. We weren't sure at first that that's what would be happening, but slowly but surely in the days that followed October 7th, we understood that we were going to be a core piece of the ground incursion. I got back to my unit, scrambled to get back. I was going crazy in Las Vegas, just thinking about the idea that they could, pull the trigger, go into Gaza, and I'd be left on the couch kind of watching from afar. I got to them, we suited up. It took a few weeks actually to go in. So we had some time to train and relearn some of the urban combat we had, formally trained for. It's weird, right? It's context switching that you can't imagine. Yeah, we're IDF soldiers, but at the same time, the IDF, the reservists, are made up of average Joes. Next to me is a teacher, behind me is a father of four, who's a mechanic. One of the company commanders works at a hedge fund. I mean, we're talking about people with just average, normal day-to-day lives, needing to completely switch their context and their orientation and understand, okay, I'm a combat soldier again, a full-time combat soldier. So that took time, and it was interesting to watch everybody kind of snap back into that. We entered Gaza on October 30th. The way that the IDF wanted to deploy the reservists is that we would go through the north, and active soldiers would come through the middle of Gaza, and we'd act as a vice to kind of squeeze Hamas, put military pressure on Hamas. Of course, the goal being to reveal where the hostages are being held. Our mission in the north was twofold. So oust Hamas and find terror tunnels. We went in through Kibbutz Erez into Beit Hanun, the north of the Gaza Strip, which was essentially just a terror network, a terror playground for Hamas. Everything was booby-trapped, residential areas with houses. We think about a residential area like Great Neck, it's designed around education. It's designed around prosperity. It's designed around safety and sanitation. You go into a place like Beit Hanun, and houses are completely abused, and people are completely manipulated. And so we went into about 20 different houses, 19 of them connected to terrorism in some way. We found RPG heads in the closet, the bedroom closet of one of the girls in the house, behind cupboards in the kitchen. So wooden cupboards, we opened them up. We found AK-47s with ammunition behind it. We found one house that was a decoy for a tunnel. So a house that could have been used to, of course, shelter Gazans. We know that they live above 40% poverty line. So could have used that house to house Gazans, but instead the entire thing was just concrete. And sure enough, right in the middle of the basement, there was a tunnel entrance. 6 tunnels in total. We found also the house of a commander, an UNRWA vest with a map of tunnels, with a doctor's badge for Al-Shifa, for one of the commanders of Hamas. So just kind of painting a very wide picture of the way that, they manipulate organizations like UNRWA and residential areas. And of course, we knew that, but seeing it firsthand as a marketer, as someone who's kind of moved on from day-to-day combat, it's just, it's remarkable how much they've given up as a partner for peace. We know that they abuse hospitals, schools, places of worship, and they turn them into weapons depots, battlegrounds, command centers. But we, the IDF, don't want to destroy that infrastructure. not just because of optics, because of a moral code that the IDF follows. A moral code that prompted me to volunteer in the IDF and prompted me to be very proud of that service as well. So there was a day where, after 15 days of fighting Hamas, but it's like fighting ghosts. So they pop out of tunnels 2 to 3 minutes, they shoot at us, and then don't hit anything, and sure enough disappear. After 15 days of those kind of skirmishes, they finally did hit something, and they were able to ambush us, and that has to do with an UNRWA school. So we know that they use these kinds of buildings. And
Aaron, what month was this, what you're describing right now, when Hamas ambushed you by the UNRWA school?
Sure. So we went into the Gaza Strip October 30th, and this was 15 days after. So I'm talking about November 14th.
Thank you.
November 14th, we woke up. We were assigned with taking over a new house. And unfortunately, in a place like Beit Hanun, you have to do a clean sweep of all the houses. You just don't know which houses have tunnels and which don't, which houses have weapons and which don't. So we had to take a house that required us crossing through a field that was adjacent to this UNRWA school. And the school was left standing, and we were left exposed. And as we were crossing, I'm in the officer squad. So we're the last to cross. And as we're crossing, we're in pairs. I get to the house safely with the person with me. He goes inside. I turn around to see where my officer is. And I had a bad feeling. I had a bad feeling because of what we know about UNRWA and because of what we know about their abuse of these kind of buildings, and just this feeling of we're too exposed. So I turn around to check on him, and sure enough, as I'm turning around, it's like a living nightmare. I hear and I see my officer gets shot, and my other friend as well, the person that he's assigned with, his tag team member. So the two of them go down. The two of them get shot at the same time. Both of them are now on the ground, and we're in a firefight. So we hear AK-47s start to erupt from the school. And again, it's like fighting ghosts. They pop out of these tunnels. They're shooting at us. You can't really see them. They have a small window of opportunity. They take it, and you're trying to find that small window within a big building. But I take off my bag, and I start shooting towards where I hear the AK-47s to give cover fire to my two friends who have now been shot. After 2 to 3 minutes, I look over at my officer, and he's lying on his side, and he looks like he's in bad shape. And in my head, I make the calculation that if I don't go over to save him, he's going to die. He's lost a lot of blood. Maybe he fainted. I don't know. I was naive. I thought, I didn't think the worst. I sprinted over to him, got to him, lifted him up. He's heavy. He's a big guy anyway, but he's got his bag, his vest. All his gear is on him because we were in the process of moving. So I lift him up, and I'm moving slow. I take 2 to 3 steps towards the house to bring him back. And sure enough, I feel, I've never been shot before, but it felt like a cannonball hits my leg. And that's a sniper bullet. So now I'm on the ground. I thought my right leg flew off. I didn't want to look because I thought I'd go into shock. And quickly I said to myself, okay, that's it. They've got me. If I don't move, I'm going to die. So I start to crawl. And thank God I was a bad soldier in boot camp and didn't know Hebrew. They punished me all the time. So muscle memory served me well. I'm very good at crawling, apparently, out of sticky situations. So I crawled and crawled and crawled, and I'm willing myself to safety. It's 20 meters, 65 feet about. And as I'm crawling, I get shot at my left leg. I didn't even know. An AK-47 bullet went through my left leg. They're shooting all around me. So I hear the bullets flying. They're hitting rocks. A rock goes into my right side. Another rock goes into my lower back near the spine. So I'm bleeding profusely out of 4 places. I get to the house. My paramedic thinks I'm a goner, but he goes to work anyway. He puts a tourniquet on my leg, gives me a blood bag in the field, lots of drugs to stabilize my condition. And I'm very lucky. He saved my leg, saved my life. 669, best search and rescue in the world. They showed up and got us out of there. 4 of us were wounded in this incident. We were taken out in a Hummer, then a helicopter. I got to Sheba Medical Center, and they didn't have to amputate. It's a miracle. So the sniper bullet shattered my bone, took out 8 centimeters of bone. And I'm very lucky that none of that bone hit a key artery, and I got to keep my leg. The bone's still missing. I have a few more surgeries and quite a long recovery ahead, but I'm going to be okay. Whether it's 6 months or a year or 2 years, I'm smiling because I know that I'm going to be all right, and I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm alive. So life's good. But there is tragedy in my story, and that's that um, my officer, who I thought was critically wounded, was actually killed. I sprinted to him because I thought I could save his life, but his life was the first one taken. He was pinned by that sniper. He was picked off first. Hamas knows how we operate. They know how we move. And in this case, usually, they're terrible combatants and they don't know how to fight, and we're well prepared, but they got one. His name was Omri David, 27 years old, a very good friend. 7 years was with his would have been future wife, Noam, and he leaves behind a grieving family. And so yeah, that's the tragedy in my story. And of course, the four of us that survived this incident are very grateful, but there's always a heavy heart. And when we have someone who's killed in action, and we'll remember Omri forever. Within 72 hours, fights erupted around that school. Special forces went in. 10 Hamas operatives, estimated to be 10 Hamas operatives, were killed. And that sniper is presumed to be dead as well. So the IDF did its job. I'll stop there. I can talk a lot about the resilience of the Israeli people and the incredible recovery I've had. I was 5 months hospitalized at Sheba, and I can talk about how incredible the FIDF was, other organizations that came to, the aid of injured soldiers, and the just global support system of Jewry, and how amazing that's been. But if I start talking about that, I'll go on for hours. So,
Aaron, can I ask you a few questions?
Of course.
Describe to me the relationship between the group, the reservists. All of you have been out of the army. All of you are working. Many of you are married. Some of you have children. That bond, when you get together each and every year, you said you were put different places, whether it was in Judea, Samaria, whether it was down by Gaza, up north, and then coming together as a group of reservists and fighting in the war. If you could describe to us the kinship, the bond, the relationship between the group, almost to paint a picture for people who they themselves have never been in the army, don't know what it means to be a reservist or understand that culture.
Sure. It's out of a movie sometimes, feels like. I mean, it's, you've seen Saving Private Ryan, and Tom Hanks is a teacher, and you've got the tough guy, and you've got someone else who believes in God, and you've got someone else who's an atheist, and it's all walks of life. So it's, in our specific group, we didn't have Druze. We had another battalion, next to us that had Druze soldiers, but not even everyone's Jewish. But even when you have a group that everyone is Jewish, it's like we're all completely different people, and yet we're all the same. And the bonds are unbreakable. You're talking about sticking together people who, again, have day-to-day lives. Either it's high tech, or they're students, or one is 23 years old, one is 50 years old. It doesn't really matter. We're put in extraordinary situations. We're just really normal people, similar likes, dislikes, hobbies, passions, laughs as everyone else. And we're just put in this extraordinary situation together, and we have each other's backs. I was with people that needed to pray, 3+ times a day. And I was with other people that didn't believe in God. And I was with people that are very serious as soldiers, and they have crazy equipment. And this is, and I have people who didn't want to fight. They're actually more like pacifists by nature. But everyone, heeded the call. Everyone was there together, having each other's backs. Everyone in those moments took it extremely seriously, and we all understood the mission, which is ultimately to oust Hamas and get our hostages back. And you saw that. You saw fear translate into really extraordinary resilience, and it was scary, but also beautiful to watch these people come together in the way that they did.
Thank you. You've been now in therapy, so you've been undergoing between surgeries and therapy 10 months. You mentioned you will have at least 2 more surgeries. Can you describe to us mentally, psychologically, what it's been like for you, for your wife, for your parents, going through this, obviously in a very challenging journey, physically challenging, mentally, psychologically? If you're willing to share with us that challenge.
I'm just going to move 1 second. The sun is seems to be bothering the camera. So, Steve, you asked a wonderful question. You wanted to know about basically how this is affecting me and my family and my wife. So obviously it's very difficult 1.5 months into a marriage to have to deal with the kind of strain and stress that multiple surgeries and 5 months of hospitalization puts on it. Crazy enough, so my wife's father was injured in the Yom Kippur War. He lost an eye, and actually he was in a tank that exploded. He was a tank commander, and much of the tank burned up, and it scarred his body pretty bad as well. So she's grown up with these stories, and she's extremely resilient in that sense as well. It's been amazing to see how both my wife and her family has rallied around me in this time. My parents also have been here. This is the 3rd time they're coming now throughout this recovery process. So I felt the support from all angles, not just my friends and family, but also from all the different organizations, groups. I can't even count them anymore. I mean, the amount of people that showed up and donated, volunteered, and whether it was doing acupuncture or Reiki or just feeding us cookies all the time. I mean, it was incredible to see. And then there's myself. Obviously, it's a struggle. There are some days where I wake up and I can go through the day with the gratitude of, well, I'm alive and I have my leg. And there are other days where I wake up and that's not really enough. And it takes a toll that I'm still in pain, taking painkillers, going through surgeries. Now it's going to be, by the time it's done, it's at least 5, 6 surgeries. In an effort to try and walk again, run again, play sports again. So it's not a place I thought I'd be in this stage in my life. That put into there that I'm a young guy who wants to start a family soon, and I have 15 people that I manage that are waiting for me to come back, and there's pressure there as well. So it's a back and forth. I think most people who've gone through some serious rehab or kind of serious setback in their lives, can understand the kind of topsy-turvy, non-linear process that something as serious as this is, and it's not always fun, and it's not always positive results and great progress. There are often days where it's 3 steps back and 1 step forward. So dealing with that has been a struggle, but it's also been, I think, an amazing at this age to learn that kind of resilience and go through that kind of struggle is going to pay dividends in the long run.
I'd like to ask you a business question in terms of you mentioned you're one of the leaders of a major business, AI startup, 90 employees. You personally are responsible for 15 employees. This war, and I'm sure you're not the only one in the organization, has taken you away from the business. Now you're in rehab. You've got to spend hours a day in rehab doing what you need to be doing in order that you, like you said, that you could walk, that you can be able to do more than walk. How does that affect, first of all, the business itself? How does it affect your team, your employees? And how does it affect on a linear level, your fellow partners and your fellow C-suite members?
Yeah, great question. So I've been lucky that they haven't put any of this on me, but I can, I have eyes and I have gone back to the office to visit, and I do sync with my team as much as I can, especially between surgeries and bouts of hospitalization. It's a struggle. My team needs a leader, and I have people who have stepped up big time, and it's incredible to see. I mean, really, people that are rising to the occasion and starting to impact in different ways and find just find their kind of, I don't know, principles of leadership in this. But they're missing kind of their general, I guess, in the trenches, and it's tough. It's tough. I think there's business continuity and then there's growth for a startup. And we did an incredible job at business continuity throughout the war, throughout all the distraction, throughout my injury. I mean, they've done an amazing job of keeping the ship really sailing strong. And then there's growth. There's, finding new avenues of growth and thinking about just different strategic directions. And that's kind of been on pause. So that hurts, of course, the business, but everyone's been understanding, and we're in a good position. And the beauty is that there was a strong foundation before. And then I have a great executive team as well. So they've been able to kind of rally around me and just get stuff done with me out. And I'm very respectful to them for giving me the time I need to kind of breathe and deal with this. Same as my boss and CEO, who's been incredible. So yeah, Hyro is an amazing place to work, and the startup's been doing extremely well despite all of these challenges. And yeah, I'm very grateful to them. Also, our investors, they came to the hospital to visit. I mean, they have my back as well. So I feel very much supported. But it's tough. It's tough watching from afar, something that I've spent 5.5 years building. It's hard to not want to, despite me only, being basically on one leg right now, it's hard to not want to pick up, the toolbox and start chipping away at some of the problems that I see happening. But I got to focus on rehab and getting healthy.
Now, again, I'm assuming that I heard correct that there are 90 members of the team overall.
Yeah.
What percentage of your business were called up for reserve fighting?
So we're one of the lucky ones. I know startups that had 40% of their 40% of the company basically had to go and fight. We at first had about only 5 people that were called up. The issue is that 2 out of the 8 of our executive team was called up. So that made it very difficult. The 2 biggest departments in the company, the executives were called up to fight. So it's mine and then our R&D department as well. So that was a blow because that left essentially most of the department without their core manager and leader. So that was tough, and that lasted for me, it lasted for months and months and months. Now I had some time to go back to the office in between surgeries, but realistically, it's been, it's been 8 months. And then our VP R&D, he's been out for a bit. At the beginning, at least, was out for a bit, and so that was tough too. But now he's since kind of got back into the swing of things. But yeah, that was tough for us. But nothing like some of these smaller startups. It's like they have 20 people and 6 or 7 of them are not there for months on end, and I mean that can shut you down. There are startups for sure that have collapsed because of this.
That's crucial for us to hear what you've just shared, because we talk about many different angles of the war, its impact, but just the whole dynamic of an organization, the whole dynamic of a business, and the whole viability of a business. And you see that huge stress, and you gave examples of businesses that have shut down.
Yeah, they need support. They needed emergency investments. There are groups, and the names escape me, but there are organizations that popped up for that reason alone. Their whole idea was to try to give some kind of, a cushion, financial cushion to some of these startups in the form of investments so that they could weather the storm. And I'm not sure how many benefited from that, but yeah, there's certainly the high tech sector in Israel took a hit. In general, I don't even think we've seen the real ripple effects from a lot of what's going on in the war, and a lot of the just financial implications have not become clear. But certainly, you already have startups that couldn't survive this war and its impact.
I want to take you to a little different direction. Most of the participants listening on this briefing understand that the Ministry of Defense and the Army has asked us, we've committed $90 million to PTSD therapy, whether it's early detection, whether it is the therapy for those who've been discharged for veterans, all different components of it. The therapy center that's being developed in Netanya, the partnership with Sheba, the training of a whole new array of new therapists who don't have a background in PTSD, who are being trained and managed, setting up centers all over the country. That's one of the many things that we've been asked to do by the general staff and by the MOD. If you could talk to the listeners, to the participants, your observation in terms of the PTSD of what you've seen, be it from those in STEER, the regular Army, those that are reservists, those who've been dealt with frontline horrific battles, those who've just been in the war, hearing the sounds that they've heard, seeing what they've seen, being away from family, from their businesses. From your angle, if you could paint a picture of the PTSD.
Sure. I mean, I think it comes in different forms for different people. There are guys that weren't injured in my unit, but just being in Gaza and being around tank fire, airstrikes, loud explosions, being within earshot of AK-47s, knowing that someone's trying to kill them. That was enough to kind of spook them, and some of them actually had to leave the unit. My perception of it, I'm with people at Sheba Medical Center now, rehabbing, and some of them far worse than others, that they can't sleep. So most of the problems that I hear about are exacerbated from the fact that these soldiers they can't seem to find peace in a normal night's sleep. So either it's that they stay up until 3, 4 in the morning, or they are able to fall asleep and then wake up in the middle of the night, or they're waking up way too early. Whatever it is, I mean, this affects the mood, affects the ability to recover, affects a lot of different things. I think also there's another. It's amazing what the FIDF is doing and what Sheba is doing, and PTSD needs to be, I think, really dealt with head on. But there's also the kind of there's the debris that's on top of the PTSD. So in order to get to the core of the problem, you've got other things that are in the way. So soldiers who do have heavy PTSD or moderate PTSD, in order to actually deal with their problems, they need to first get rid of a lot of the distractions in their lives that are weighing them down. And I think that that's something that's a little bit more forgotten at this point. And I'll give an example of what I'm talking about. So in order to deal with PTSD, these soldiers need to know that they're covered financially in certain ways, and they need to have access to doctors in a seamless way. And they need to, instead of, having to scramble to try and get things paid for from the Ministry of Defense, which can take, hours or weeks or whatever of documents and phone calls. And, they need to be able to have that time to process and do the motions, go through the motions and do the therapies that are required for PTSD. And I think that's something that right now they don't have. So a lot of these soldiers don't have that space to deal with PTSD. I know fathers that are especially bogged down, because it's not just them that need support. It's the family and the kids. It's the kids and the wife. Um, so yeah, I think PTSD unfortunately is when people think about it, it's like people with nightmares or people who are like extremely sensitive to noise, and those are true. Yeah, those are bad symptoms of PTSD, and it's obviously these things need to be dealt with. But in order to deal with them, I think one thing I'd like to see is more focus a bit on easing for some of these soldiers the burden of getting back to life. So, injured soldiers, it's Ministry of Defense dealing with that. And for non-injured soldiers, you have soldiers with PTSD and they're not even acknowledged as having PTSD. So it's getting access to that care and dealing with all the bureaucracy around it that I think that needs to be focused on quite a bit. And it's still a problem. So despite all the great, I think, advancement they've made and progress, et cetera, I think it's still an issue is access to care and getting rid of a lot of the kind of stuff that's sitting on top before you can get to the core, the core problems.
Aaron, we want to thank you for your time, for your thoughtfulness. Before we ask you if you want to share some final thoughts or some closing thoughts, your community at Great Neck, the Great Neck Synagogue, Howie Michelle Wolf, Rabbi Polikoff, the whole team there, we're really proud of you, proud of
Wow.
your family. They send their love to you. Share with us maybe some closing thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say two things. First of all, I think I was 5 months hospitalized. That started in November, and the amount of support, the amount of Jews that showed up from all around the world, but especially America, was endearing and incredible. Now it's slowed down a bit, and I think there's fatigue. And I think, my request to the Jews listening now is to fight through that fatigue. It for a time was very clear and no one had any questions about, okay, we're going to support Israel and I need to go to Israel or I need to donate to Israel or I need to join this organization or I need to do more. And that's amazing. And I think it's less clear now because of how many months have passed and because of how frustrating and just exhausting all of this has been. But I implore you, just like the IDF soldiers that you love so much who are continuing to fight on the front lines or who are giving up their jobs and leaving their families, to go and protect the state, really keep fighting through it and find more ways to impact, especially now. There are less hands on the ground. There are less organizations here. There are less donations coming through to injured soldiers, to the IDF in general, to different places that really need it, to the south of Israel that's still reeling from this. So where possible, of course, everyone's tired, but fight through it and find your maximum point of impact. And I'd say the other thing I want to leave people with is what happened with the encampments and what continues to happen now with anti-Semitism and the normalization of Jew hatred in the United States. And the situation looks extremely bleak, of course. And it's hard to not think of our positions as Jews and think about how wary of a state we're in. But I do believe that things will change. I was in the States now and I did a speaking tour and I saw signs of hope. I saw signs of non-Jews who understand that being pro-Israel is being pro-American, is being pro-Western values, is being pro-progressivism. I mean, there are people who make that connection, and eventually the world will make that connection again. And the people that need to support us, that should support us because we identify with those strong Western values, freedom, democracy versus, terrorism and radicalism, those people will help us in our fight and will support us. And I pray for a time where, like I grew up in Great Neck, it's no longer cool to be a Jew hater, and it's very much accepted, and we can show pride in being Jews, and we should, and we will, and That's it. That's the message I have.
If I could pick up to those participating on this Zoom with the point that Aaron made, look, we just received the request for 1,000 university scholarships. These are all young men and young women who fought in this war, who are coming from infantry units, infantry support units. Their parents are financially challenged. These are not wealthy. They're not upper middle class families. They're either poor or lower middle class families. And if they can sacrifice their youth and their innocence, if they can put themselves in harm's way to defend Israel, to defend humanity, what we'd like to do is to give them a university education, which you understand in Israel, it's a European model. When you come out of university, you're employable. You're an engineer, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're a psychologist, you're a programmer. So we're looking over the course of the next 2 months to raise 1,000 new scholarships. That's just one of many requests that we're receiving. And we want to wish each and every one of our participants a very meaningful week. Our prayers, our thoughts, and our gratitude is to Aaron. Aaron, what you've done as a soldier, what you've done as a reservist, how you, your wife, your parents, your in-laws have sacrificed, how your fellow members of your team, your employees have sacrificed to save Israel, to save the Jewish people, and to be at the front, really defending evil, defending against tyranny and the kind of horrific activities of the Shia Caliphate of Iran and its proxies, in this case, the proxy of Hamas. We can't really express our gratitude to you because there's no way that we can appreciate the sacrifice you've given for us. But all we can say is thank you to you, Aaron. And you should have a refuah shalem, a continued speedy recovery. And you should have continued success in your family life and in your professional world.
Thank you so much.